just really just an admirable, incredible list of people in our lives who show great leadership. A servant leader, any leader really, I guess, is not meant to do everything and doesn't necessarily know everything. And a servant leader might choose capable people to do certain parts of the work, that need to be done, allowing others to contribute to the final goal, kind of as someone mentioned, makes everyone feel welcome, allows their voice to be counted. A servant leader could delegate some of the authority, but make themselves available, to supervise or to kind of make sure that things are flowing well. So a servant leader serves in their role as a leader, but also coaches or mentors, inspires, someone said. So it looks like we're kind of all thinking the same things here. Would someone be willing to read this slide for us? This is what our rule tells us regarding servant leadership.
I'll read it.
Okay, thank you.
Leadership positions in the society at any level are always to be accepted as service to Christ, to the members and the poor. Servant leadership is done in imitation of Jesus, who said, "For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many."
All right. So in essential, every moment, or every member is a servant leader. As we continue to look at this concept of servant leadership, so we look at a servant leader who is not rigid, but always searching, listening, expecting to find a better solution, growing and learning. A servant leader recognizes that members need to be led, not pushed, persuaded, not told. These are just some things to consider. Servant leader is open to inspiration, recognizing that we rely on God's providence. Actually, that probably should have been the first on the list, huh? We are dependent upon the providence of God. We, as servant leaders, work to improve our own listening skills so that we can be a listener, a better listener in our leadership. As servant leaders, we accept other people as they are. However, we challenge them to grow as persons. And I think that was also inside of our descriptions earlier. Servant leader looks for practical solutions. And as I'm looking at this list, which is, presented, this presentation is also something that the national office, Debbie and I kind of added our own, thoughts, but this is part of our own thoughts here. As I was looking at this list, I thought, oh my goodness, is this not what you aspire to be like when you're visiting with neighbors in need? In a way, are you not all already servant leaders on your home visit? And when I say that, I just don't mean you present here at this meeting. I'm talking about Vincentians, all of us collectively already, we are willing to search for new ideas and listen, when we are with our neighbors in need. We are willing to lead by example, persuade them rather than tell them what to do, right? We're looking for new ways to have something get accomplished for the greater need. We rely on God's presence within that visit. We, again, are growing in our own leadership, our own listening to the needs of others. We challenge them to grow, to help them become more self-dependent, and are always looking for practical solutions. So, this to me was really an eye-opening realization here, that servant leadership is who we already are. In terms of conference leadership, these are the actions, and I'll let you, kind of read through them, but these are overall, as a conference, these are the things we work towards, attracting new members. It's everybody's responsibility to do so. Looking at the diversity of your community, your parish community, your local community, and making sure that that diversity is represented in the conference. Always looking to develop and identify potential replacements for leadership. That's the idea of succession planning. Improving our members' participation, reaching out to them if someone's absent or has been absent multiple times from a meeting. How is it that we can re-engage them? How can we invite associate members to become more active, perhaps attending a social with them, or helping them feel a greater part of the conference? Increasing our charitable works. What are the needs of the community now? Checking with our pastor or pastoral leadership about that. Again, following and sticking to meeting agendas, that's something we all, really should do. And complying with governance, those things that help us to sustain, our nonprofit status, and with our ability to be recognized as members of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And of course, keeping up with our rule.
Some qualities of a president that I'd like to read. And remember, again, this was in 1841, so a long time ago. So the president must have great piety to serve as an example, and perhaps an even greater affability, so as not to frighten by virtues that are too rigid. Must have the habit of self-denial, the spirit of brotherhood, the experience of good works, be one that unites to the zeal that creates, the prudence that preserves, one that knows how to keep the society in the ways of simplicity and wise freedom for which God has led it to this point, one that does not discourage, nevertheless, well-inspired efforts that may arise. It is necessary, in short, that the president attracts trust and respect, and at the same time knows how to make friends with the youngest members of the large family.
So when we look at those qualities of leadership, again, then and now, we look at some of the same characteristics that you mentioned already early on. And just to kind of re-emphasize what Frederick presented, some of these terms of piety and affability and self-denial, what we're talking about here is, in general, being respectful, being dutiful, to your responsibility, being good-natured and friendly, having some sense of selflessness. I think I heard somebody mention that. I like that collective ego. It's like, it's not me, it's we, right? So that's a really strong, and that's something too that Frederick emphasized as well, that idea of selflessness and being inviting, willing to serve, to be hands-on, to be active, is also a quality then and now. Having a sense of enthusiasm, zeal, right? To be excited, to be inspiring. Modest and a sense of ease in terms of simplicity. And I think, again, that first word that was mentioned, calm, having a sense of simplicity, a sense of ease, a sense of calm. And of course, trust and respect. We talk about being able to be confident in that person, knowing that they're dependable. So again, looking then in Frederick's words and time and now, those qualities kind of come through. There's an essence, you know, that's the same from then until now. When we narrow down leadership overall, and then looking to that primary role of leadership in the sense of a conference, we want to just look at some of the responsibilities, which some of you and many of you already know, but it's good to, as a reminder, refresher, you know, what some of that is. So an overall general responsibility, again, which you can share with other members of your conference, you know, are kind of fall within these categories, a bit of that job description, I guess you could say, for a conference president. You know, communication and communicating effectively is really, really important in the role of a conference president. So whether that's within the membership, communicating regularly with your members, with pastor or pastoral leadership, the pastoral council, whoever that may be within your parish, and of course the networks that you have, you know, if your community agencies or other churches and organizations that you might do some collaborative work with, making sure that there's an effective communication is really key as a conference president. And then along with that communication comes that facilitating of conference meetings. We rely on our conference president to keep things timely, to kind of continue the flow, to generate and maintain that agenda. And with that comes, as was mentioned, welcoming and a welcoming environment, so that people want to keep coming to your meetings, right? Attending or even delegating, appointing a representative, a proxy, if you're not allowed to come as a president, to some of those meetings that we have, or to the council meetings, and perhaps even to regional or national offerings, just being aware so that that information can be brought back to the conference members. And it really is a responsibility of the conference president to delegate. Again, as was mentioned earlier, you do not need to know all or be all. So a conference president needs to delegate authority and duties to other members. So that goes hand in hand. If you assign a duty to someone else, allow them the authority over that duty. You know, we don't need someone to just watch over our shoulders all the time. However, it's important to support, inspire, and perhaps offer some supervision. The relationship with a spiritual advisor is key as well. So encouraging faith development, being aware of the needs of our members and what's going on in their lives, you know, also helps to build that sense of community. Engaging in service, so being active in home visits or special works of the conference, absolutely. However, a conference president needs to know that that could be adjusted based on the responsibilities to the conference. So being aware of that balance is important. And a conference president is responsible, and again, that comes through communication with the council office, but is responsible to develop and ensure that compliance is in place regarding those societal policies and procedures, and then working with the officers, such as your treasurer or secretary, to make sure that all of those things are in order. So in essence, this is what a conference president's job description and a sense of responsibilities might look like. And in support of the conference presidents, then we have the conference officers. So each president appoints officers with the conference members' approval. So a conference president thinks about who would those officers, vice president, secretary, treasurer, who would be good to have in those positions from the conference members, and then seeks approval of the conference for that. And again, it's vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And it says here at least one, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Also, a spiritual advisor is not considered an officer, but a spiritual advisor is key, and each conference is required to have a spiritual advisor. It's pretty essential as well for the conference. And then again, other members might be entrusted with duties as things are delegated. And just to be aware that the officers' terms really do end when a new president takes office. They may be reappointed, but the officer's term duties perhaps end once that with the outgoing president. However, they may continue if the new president asks them to reassign that. And then Debbie will guide us through the role of a vice president.
I had muted myself, so sorry. The vice president, now interestingly enough, they do say that 2 vice presidents can be useful. I think in our council with our 41 conferences, I don't know of any conference that has 2 vice presidents. It's more likely that in our conferences, we do have co-presidents. Several conferences have co-presidents. And I think, I know National really prefers the 2 vice presidents as opposed to co-presidents. But I think it's very helpful. So if you do have 2 vice presidents, and this is the same as I think with co-presidents, we do have one of the designation is more like their co-president. The first vice president can be charged with developing the activities. He or she sees that members are busy and that they have work to perform. Then we also have the second vice president, or maybe a co-president, can devote their energy to the recruitment of new members, focusing more on, trying to search out getting new members, because don't forget that is one of the vital activities that we're supposed to do as a conference, is always be looking to try to recruit new members. It's also, you can contact members who miss meetings. It's really important. We do have that element of friendship, so to always follow up. They may be, they can replace the president at conference or council meetings, be a proxy, and other meetings when the president is unable to attend. The vice president also collaborates constantly and effectively with the president, and kept informed on all aspects of the conference. And then they also, I don't know how many of you do this, but the conference vice president, one of their main activities is to organize the election of the next president if they're not a candidate. The responsibility is delegated then to another officer if the VP will be a candidate. And they should be charged with specific duties so that they can be productively involved. I know sometimes people think the vice president is kind of like not really much of a role, but it is a key role. And it also helps groom somebody to be the next president. And also they perform specific duties as assigned by the president and supporting the other conference officers. So there are specific duties for a conference vice president. But again, I just wanted to say that, we do have co-presidents, and one of them in that role usually serves more like a vice president, as we've described the activities here.
Yeah, thank you for that, Debbie.
Welcome.
Another important role is the secretary. So we know our secretaries are really good preparing minutes and reporting on them. They maintain a perhaps, however that is, a minute book or files or however that is, but maintains copies of any of the minutes as well as the annual reports. So making sure that those things are kept somewhere for the sake of the conference. So keeping those records, statistical data, things like that. Maintaining any resolutions or motions, that is brought forth by your conference. So making sure that those are recorded and available as needed. Maintaining the membership records is also part of the secretary's role. So as we know, members can come and go throughout, each year. So updating that with the council office is important, and then providing that updated membership record each year is also important. So things like your phone numbers and all those contact information, making sure all that's accurate. And then processing those non-financial functions of the conference, whatever that might be. So if you need to take attendance for any reason, or even maybe recording miles and hours, that might be something a secretary could do for if you're not doing it individually in Serveware. Perhaps that's some role that the secretary could take on. And then, of course, then perhaps supporting other conference officers or offering assistance as needed by the president.
Mm-hmm. And then we move to the treasurer role. And there's a lot of things, and we just want to remind you that each year in our council, Michelle Martin, our director of finance, does do a workshop on the role of the treasurer and the secretary, and gets more into detail. But these are more of the general task of a treasurer. So the treasurer is responsible for the conference funds and for keeping accurate and appropriate records and reports. They follow the council-defined process and duties. For expenditure of funds, they talk about for receipt and expenditure of funds. You do keep up to date the financial records, keeps the accounts, which should be audited at least once a year. By the way, in our council, we have a Ritz Holman, they come in and they are our auditors. So you all are familiar with that. You get the information in, and they review things. So you don't have to do all of this yourself. Some of these are taken right out of the, national might say that a conference has to perform their own audit, but we do that. We just ask that the records are up to date and turned in. Mm-hmm. You also, you do complete the annual report with the president. That's really important to get in. We also have a couple of stragglers, but pretty much people are on time. And then, as I said, we do audit you annually, and you try to always at every meeting have an up-to-date financial report on what's happening so that every member is aware. That should never be a secret thing. It's transparency regarding that. And then we do also have make sure the funds are deposited regularly and promptly at a bank. You should have an account in the conference's name. Funds belonging to the society have always been and must be kept separate from the treasurer's personal assets and parish funds. So we have our own checking accounts. And then we also, bank balance should be reported at every meeting. As I said, submitted with the conference quarterly report. If the conference, a lot of times conferences do quarterly reports just to help them with their annual reports. And then verified by the president. For auditing purposes, the invoices and statements are obtained before any disbursement is made, or receipts should be collected and retained for all disbursements. That's important. All payments should be made. Well, most of the payments are made by check. Eventually, we'll probably have some electronic fund transfer, that you can do that. That's what Michelle was telling you, right, Maria?
Yeah, so most payments are still made by check, but
Right.
EFT is available. Yeah.
And then the credit of the conference must be safeguarded, and therefore all just accounts should be paid as they become due. So it's really, the treasurer functions are really of great importance to the society, as you can see. But anytime you have any questions about this, you can always call our Michelle, our director of finance, and she will happily help you. She's gone to conferences to assist them personally, or also she can do it over the phone or on Zoom. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
And as we said, each conference must have a spiritual advisor. The role of the spiritual advisor is to help in that development of our spiritual life, so that we can better understand the meaning of charity and how it's applied practically, to those that we help. Spiritual advisors should attend meetings on a regular basis and provide readings for meditation. There are spiritual reflections, which many of you are familiar with, that are provided or offered by the national office. And those reflections are really what's meant to happen is for there to be a reflection and discussion. So that's really important, is that you are able to share together, not just listen to perhaps some kind of a homily or something. It's not meant to be a sermon from a spiritual advisor. You're really meant to share together your reflection on God's word, and how that pertains to, those you serve. So a spiritual advisor then also attends some training or formation that's offered right now through the national office. Yes, priests, deacons, permanent deacons, clergy, religious order, those are really fantastic, if we're able to have that type of leadership in that role. However, we certainly don't want to discredit the ability of a lay person, to grow in that role. Some of us might have a calling for it and may not feel as confident, or because we're not, a religious clergy. However, we certainly have the ability to fit the role of a spiritual advisor. Yeah, so this is where we start talking more about the role, this process, right? What is the term of a conference president?
Right, a conference president term. You were done with the spiritual advisor part, right, Maria?
Yes.
Yes. So the conference president term is, as you all know, the conference president is elected through a secret vote for a 3-year term, which may be renewed once. That's in the rule. And then after serving, and the maximum you can serve is 2 consecutive terms, 2 consecutive 3-year terms. So after serving those 2 terms, a retiring president is not eligible for re-election as president until a further 3-year term has elapsed. And then the term starts on October 1st and ends on the last day of September, 3 years later. So some people's term is going to be ending this September 30th, and the next president will start, October 1st. And the president is at the service of all those aided by the conference and of all the conference members.
So here we are in June, and next is July. So this is what we want to start thinking about in terms of election. I think part of this is that, this is something that just is, so we need to realize and recognize and have our members realize that this is the way that it is. We have an election process. It's just something that we do, So in July, some of this, there's a formality to it. So Debbie and I were talking about how this is what's formally presented by the national office as far as this election process. But certainly, your conference best, the makeup of your conference and how this can be done within that. But in July, it really is a time then for the president, the current president, to convene a nominating committee so that they then can solicit nominations for the office of president. Typically, the vice president leads that committee. However, if you're the president, can appoint or another person to be the committee chairperson, let's say. The committee doesn't have to be a large group. It needs to be more than one person. So, 2 to 3 people, it should be fine. So anyhow, that nominating committee then ensures that the nominees know the role and responsibility. Will be providing you with information on how to, on that. And hopefully there are 2 candidates that can be presented. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes, of course, there's only one. But that person should be qualified and understand their role and responsibility of a president. Then in August, those candidates present their qualifications. So again, we have some formal documentation that can be done, or you can simply have a conversation. The candidates can present, what their hopes and dreams and thoughts, what they have to offer, just simply in conversation, or it can be written down and shared or read, with the members. And then the committee ensures that the conference members also understand the roles and responsibility of the president, so that they know if this person that is come forward or people that are candidates, are able to fill that role.
Right. And then we move to September. So in September, an election takes place by secret written ballot. They ask that a tiebreaker be established before a vote occurs, just some way in case there's a tie, something that, something to break the tie. The nominating committee chairperson distributes ballots and collects the filled ballots. And then the committee does count the ballots and reports to the chairperson the results of the election. So this, often happens right at a meeting. Then the chairperson reveals the name of the person elected. Now, again, this is ideally, what happens. Secret ballot takes place even if only one candidate is presented. And that's always the case in the society. So whatever the office is, whether it's district council president or conference president, if there's only one person whose name is, comes forward to be nominated, we still need to hold that election per the bylaws and the rule. And then the newly elected president appoints the officers and the spiritual advisor during this month. Another little side note here is that no one is supposed to be both the president and the spiritual advisor. I know that is in the rule. So you might want to look at that in case someone is serving both roles. You want to discern and try to find someone else to be the spiritual advisor.
And then another thing that might not be noted here is that the count is not shared with the membership either.
Thank
so
you.
when
Yes.
when that's the committee that's together counting and assuring that the count is correct, they do not there in turn provide the count to the members. It's just the name of who was the elected person. So then in October, that newly elected president and the officers then are installed, and we do provide you with a prayer and installation guide. The outgoing president, then it's their responsibility to inform the pastor, pastoral council, or whoever the people are in the parish leadership that would need to know a change in officers. So perhaps if the bulletin editor is a main point of contact, make sure that that person knows as well who is the successor is. And then also submit those names to the council office at that time. So by October, we should be able to have that information as well. And by all means, then that outgoing president, we hope, will offer support during that transition of leadership in those months of October, November, December. How does this get accomplished? Well, we really need to look to, again, God's providence, the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and we really look at this concept of discernment. We want to discern in our hearts, what is it that God is calling us to do? What is God's will? And the signs that are there, is our will aligning to God's will? And what do we need to do? So we really need to journey into our hearts, and it's a listening heart, not a thinking head in this process of discernment. So we'll be providing you as well a really concise guide. It's a really nice short read, but discernment, making inspired choices. It's offered actually by Joe Paprocki, who is an author through Loyola Press, and he provides guidance to catechists primarily. However, I felt that his discernment process was an easy way for us to determine not our will, but God's will, and how our will aligns to God's will in terms of discerning if we are called to certain roles or other decisions in our life. So it's not just about this, but in all kinds of ways, we need to discern God's will.
Right. And then we do have a process for personal discernment. And again, what Maria said, keep that in mind. It's all about what is God's plan for me in this. It's not necessarily who will be the next president, but it's what is my role? Do I have a role with this? What is God's plan? So just a little outline of this is more, writing a clear, simple, discernible statement, such as, I will make myself available to assume a leadership position in my conference. And then prayer is really critical to this. Pray, and then you make a list of, reasons why you could do this, list of pros. Clear your mind, pray, and then next to the pros, also then make a list of what would be preventing me from, taking on this role, a list of cons, what reasons could there be? Then you pray again and you weigh carefully the two lists. And when you have a sign of the Spirit in your decision is when you feel at peace. When you look at that, more it's like, oh, I could be the president. You feel peaceful about that and not fraught with anxiety. And so, or if it's, the other way, maybe you're feeling like, no, I really couldn't, then that's the right decision. And so again, you would say, Lord, where are you calling me within this Vincentian ministry? Really, we have 2, 5, and 8 years, or even over the next year, and trying to think of what is that. But that's a lot of times people are saying, no, I can't do this. But really, if you go through this process, you can come up with more of a decision. I really believe in that. Then that leads us right over to probably the meat of this whole thing. Yes, hello, which is what we're talking about. Succession planning. Okay, here I am. I'm in this role. I need to leave this role, but now I can't find anybody to take over. Nobody's coming forward saying, I want to be the president. And so it's at this time that you really, and a lot of you have been faced with that, or you've been in a conference where that's happened. And we've heard of this over the years. Someone will say, I have to stay in as president because no one wants this role. And if I don't do it, my conference will die. And they feel a great sense of responsibility to keep the conference going. So we wanted to ask you at this time, if you would share, what's the situation in your conference? Have you had any situations like this occur where, you're saying nobody wants to be president, or have come up with creative ideas? So we'd like it to really open it up to you at this time. I don't know if you have anything to add, Maria, before. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I wasn't even thinking of that myself, that if a conference is really struggling and doesn't have anyone, it's actually in our council, it would be Penny, or Mike Farrell will be our next council president, who could help and actually appoint a person in the conference, of course, if they want to be doing this. And normally you think they would have come forward, but they have the authority to appoint someone for a period of 4 to 6 months to serve in that role until an election can be held, or maybe longer, depending on the circumstances, just so that the conference doesn't fold. And like Maria said, I really thought that was interesting, that when the Vincentian learned how long that group had been, in the parish, they really thought about it and said, wow, it's an honor. I think I can be a servant leader. I can lead this conference so that it's not going to die. It's not going to, completely fold. And then also along with that is trying to get new people, recruit new members. So anybody have any other comments on this related to it? And it's titled Not Me, because of course, you ask who wants to be the president and everybody kind of shrinks, right? you've all heard those stories. Someone says, I missed a meeting and I came back and I found out I was the president. Now, that should never happen, right? But that has, where someone would be nominated and then elected. I do know of people that's happened to. Well, that should never, because they should be willing to accept that nomination process. But right, it shouldn't be something you shrink from, it should be, and really that shared leadership, that servant leadership, we're all part of the same team. It shouldn't be such a scary thing. And, we're here to help. And so is the person who steps down as president should also always be there to help mentor, or, when if there are questions. I've heard that from many people saying, and someone who's already stepped down has said, I'll be a co-president with you so that I can help you, learn the ropes as you're going along. And that's been really greatly appreciated by the incoming president. So then the benefits, there are benefits of leadership. We've gone over a lot of these, but of course, leaders have an opportunity to grow in spirituality. I don't know, Maria, if we just want to go over these. If there's anything to comment on these while we go over them.
Yeah, I wondered if is there anything either in terms of your sense of your experience of leadership, is there a great benefit that you found for yourself, whether it's listed here or if there's something that kind of speaks to you right away, a benefit of leadership that has, come forward for you. I know I've heard volunteers and leaders, people that have gotten involved at different levels of the society since I've been here. So many of them have said, I learned so much, is one of the main things. I got to know so many other people, is some of the things I had heard. I'm so excited about, attending something that they can, meet new people again. So there have been many benefits, personal benefits, to leadership. Debbie and I will also be sending you and others just supporting documentation so that you have things that you can look to aside from this presentation as you talk with your conference members about the different officer positions, the idea of succession, and how servant leadership really reflects all of us, and how it's a shared responsibility in order to sustain the vitality of our conferences.
I know, and I did like those questions, and we'll send those reflection questions along too. And Maria already alluded to some, to think about, what does your conference want to remain the same if a new leader emerges? Where is the room for change to occur under new leadership? Where has your conference become too comfortable with a practice or procedure? And how might a new perspective offer the conference growth? Questions like these, and I think they're really good. They're soul-searching questions, and you could go over these as a conference. Why would there be hesitation for a servant leader to step into a new role? What could be done to encourage enthusiastic participation? Key question, we always want to address that, right? What work should continue even with a new leader? And how does that effort need to be organized to be successful? So these type of questions we will be sending to you because they are really helpful. And again, some of these came from the group in, is it New Jersey?
Long Island, yeah.
Oh, Long Island, yes, close, right? That they've also been discerning and talking about this. So I think that can be helpful, a new way to look at this, to really think about, the next leader and, and just the conference. What do you want to continue? So
celebrate, right? Celebrate the conference.
That's right.
Yeah, what's been happening and what do we want to continue or grow?
And the last one I really like is, am I willing to prayerfully consider stepping outside my comfort zone and trusting in the Holy Spirit to guide me, and addressing that. So we can think about that as we move then to our closing prayer, if there's nothing else anyone has. to ask her questions. And so for the closing prayer,